Yep.
Welcome back to the podcast with your host, Samantha.
I'm Alexa. We're here to light up your life.
Today we have a remarkable guest with a captivating story. Damon West is a 3-time Wall Street Journal bestselling author. Damon was sentenced to 65 years in life in prison. His story and the message of the coffee bean have been shared with thousands of audiences all over the world, and USA Today named him the most in-demand speaker in America. Welcome to the show. We're very excited and honored to have you.
Thanks a lot, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time today. Thanks for having me on.
We're so excited to get into your episode today. I think you have a captivating story, and we can't wait for our audience to hear it. If you can go ahead and take us back a moment when you were sentenced to 65 years of life in prison, what led up to that moment?
Yeah, so I can tell you the exact date. The date was May 18, 2009. And May 18, 2009, a jury, 12 men and women from Dallas County, they had just finished a 6-day criminal trial. And y'all, 6 days for a trial for crimes where no one was physically hurt. Now, the crime I was standing trial for was engaging in organized criminal activity. It's a RICO case. I went down for RICO and I was the boss. I was the ringleader. And these crimes that I was committing with these other people, there were a bunch of meth-related burglaries that were happening all over Dallas. I was a meth addict back then. And as an addict, addicts do anything they have to do to get their fix, to get their high. So these burglaries go on for about 3 years, from 2005 to 2008. And the Dallas SWAT team on July 30th, 2008, took me down. Dramatic SWAT team raid. I mean, coming through the windows, bust the door off the hinges. And then I sat in Dallas County Jail waiting for that day in court that we're talking about right now, May 18th, 2009. And y'all, the jury, at the end of that long trial, they go to deliberate for 10 minutes. I mean, it was the fastest turnaround a jury could. I mean, like, I knew I was in trouble. I just didn't know how bad the trouble was. But when the judge read the sentence out loud, 65 years, it took my breath away. That's a life sentence in Texas. 65 is life. And y'all, honestly, that moment right there was what I call my rock bottom moment. People that have addiction issues, hopefully at some point they hit a rock bottom, and that's a bottom sufficient enough to make to make a change in life. And that was my rock bottom moment, being sentenced to 65 years in prison. And honestly, I didn't know if I'd ever, come away from that. I didn't know how to survive, but how I would do it. But I found out that on the road in life, when you're in a position in life where you're willing to listen to other people around you, people that don't look like you, don't come from the same background as you, because you're so ready to make that change, you're looking for the answers everywhere. The answers start popping up, right? One of the answers comes right as I'm in Dallas County Jail waiting to go to prison. I got a little 2-month window from the day I was sentenced to life in prison to the time the prison bus picks me up. And my mom and my dad have visited with me, and my mom told me, she said, here's the ultimatum: no gangs and no tattoos. None of this Aryan Brotherhood stuff, none of these white supremacist gangs. You're not doing that kind of stuff. You weren't raised to be a racist. You're not getting a bunch of tattoos. So she said, come back as the man we raised, or don't come back at all. Y'all, I don't have a clue how I'm gonna do this, but I run into this old black Muslim guy in Dallas County Jail. This guy he's from the streets of Dallas. He's a career criminal, but he's a real positive guy too. And remember, I'm in a situation where I need answers, and the answers that I have aren't going to work in this world. I came from a great family in this little town called Port Arthur, Texas. 2-parent home. My mom and my dad were married for 55 years. I was a good student growing up. I was a great athlete. I mean, man, God blessed me with a cannon for a right arm. And in Texas, we got that little thing called high school football. Everybody knows about us for Friday Night Lights. And that's what it was like for me growing up. I was the man. I grew up in the middle of that. I was a 3-year starting quarterback. Scholarship to play football at the University of North Texas, Division I college quarterback. By the time I'm 20, I'm the starter, until I got injured against Texas A&M in 96, and my career was over. And I got into drugs at this point in 96, cocaine, ecstasy, pills. But I was a very functional addict. I graduated college. I moved off to Washington, D.C. I worked in the United States Congress. I worked for a guy running for president. And in 2004, I moved back to Dallas to be a stockbroker for one of the biggest Wall Street banks in the world, UBS, United Bank of Switzerland. And it was at that job as a stockbroker that my life and the lives of so many other innocent people in Dallas would forever be changed. That day in 2004, when another broker introduced me to meth for the first time. And y'all, it was like touching a live wire. 18 months later, I'm homeless, living on the streets of Dallas. And then I become a criminal. And these property crimes go on for 3 years in Dallas. And they end up calling the crime spree the Uptown Burglaries. And they called me the Uptown Burglar. And so there I am in Dallas County Jail, the former Uptown Burglar, sentenced to life in prison. I've got no prior life experiences that can prepare me for what I'm about to go into a maximum security prison, a super max prison in Texas. But there's this guy, this old black Muslim guy named Muhammad. And Muhammad shares with me the realities of prison. He's telling me that prison's all about race. Race runs everything in prison, y'all. I mean, it is. I mean, and the inmates want it to be that way. So he's telling me you got to fight the white gangs first. You survive that, now you fight the black gangs. If you survive that, you earn the right to walk alone. He told me, he said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. He said, you have 3 choices how to respond in this pot of boiling water. You can be like a carrot that turns soft and mushy and weak, or an egg that becomes hard and mad and mean and angry. He said, or you can be like a coffee bean, which changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. And that's what he told me. The last 4 words he ever said to me were, be a coffee bean. And that was the 4 words that changed my life, y'all, because those 4 words put the power back inside me. Now, if the power's inside me, it's not in the world around me. It was the ultimate message, y'all, that our worlds are created from the inside out and not the outside in.
Wow, that is an incredible story. I can't even imagine being in that courtroom and getting sentenced to 65 years of life. I mean, that's pretty much your entire life. And so I know you received that information from Mr. Jackson, the coffee bean, and it completely, like you said, transformed your life, those 4 words. But I also know that you were given advice when you were actually in prison from your cellmate, which completely formed the way that you thought. You used to be very negative, and at the flip of a dime, you were able to become more positive and cultivate that experience throughout prison and actually change the environment like the coffee bean. And so can you take us back to that moment?
Yeah. So when I got to prison, first of all, prison by design is a punishment. And look, I know a lot about prison now. I mean, I feel like I got a PhD from the School of Hard Knocks, right? From the time I spent in prison. But after I got out of prison, I went back to school and got a master's degree in criminal justice and became a professor at the University of Houston, teaching a class called Prisons in America. So I know about prison. And so prison by design is a punishment. It's a very hard experience. It's not meant to be easy. When I first got to prison, I fought for my life. In the first 2 months, I probably got in 3 dozen fights and I lost 75% of my fights. Y'all, I got my butt kicked all over prison. But I won. You see, I won all the fights because I showed up to the fight. One of the things Muhammad told me, he said, you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. And he's telling me some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose. He said, don't worry about the losses, just get back up. And that's what I kept doing, y'all. It took 2 months of constant fighting before the violence was finally over and the threat to my physical safety was gone. But I realized 2 months into prison, I had a bigger threat to my life going on. It wasn't a physical threat. It was an internal threat, right? I'm becoming the egg. I don't want to be the egg, but I don't know how to be a coffee bean. So it was a conversation I was having with my first cellmate in prison. This is Carlos. Carlos is he's about 5'4", a little Hispanic guy, a little bank robber from San Antonio. He was serving 99 years for a bunch of bank jobs. Super nice guy, though. Love this guy to death. He's still one of my best friends in the world. So late one night in the cell, I'm telling Carlos, man, I'm struggling. I don't know how to be a coffee bean. And he's like, what's a coffee bean? So I told Carlos the story of the coffee bean, just like Muhammad told it to me. And man, Carlos really, he busted wide open for me because he said, hey, the reason why you can't be a coffee bean is because the way you think. And he said, your thinking is everything, right? Your thoughts control all your actions. He said, your problem is right now you think prison is a punishment when you should be thinking prison is your opportunity. Y'all, this took me back. No one ever once told me prison could be an opportunity. So every day I started getting up, looking at prison as an opportunity instead of as a punishment. And that's what changed for me. The reason why I was able to change my circumstances and become the person you see in front of you today is because I got up every day in a dungeon, a literal dungeon, with a great attitude, a smile on my face. I looked for the good in life every day. And if I could, and that's what I tell audiences all the time, I speak all over the world. If I can find the good inside of a dungeon, then you can find the good out here too. So it's all about the way you think. It's like some days you're sitting in traffic, right? And the traffic bothers you a lot. But other days you sit in traffic and the traffic doesn't bother you at all. Is it the traffic or is it you? And it's always you. It's always the way you think.
Wow. I'm sure that it was very difficult to wake up every day with a positive attitude. And some days, like you've just mentioned, where you were scared for your physical safety. And in those moments, what did you have to do to switch your mindset to more positive thinking?
Yeah. So the physical pain, I found out that you can heal from physical pain a lot faster than you can from, say, something emotional or mental that you go through. What I'm saying is that the pain of regret for not showing up my best self every day, the pain of regret for not giving my all, for not even trying, that's what I fear more in life than physical pain. I fear being indifferent to a challenge in front of me, right? And that's what I was focused on when I was in there. Every day wasn't a great day in prison. I'm not going to lie to you and say it was, but I made the most of my situation in there. But what I have found out, though, Alexa, is that with this perspective that I gained in life, I got to live inside of a max security prison. I've got a lot of perspective on what a bad day looks like, right? I can compare just about anything that goes on in life now to living in prison. And I realize I don't have a lot of bad days. I don't have any bad days, actually. Every day that I wake up and my feet don't hit the cold concrete floor of the prison cell, I'm going to win. But individually, what I had to do inside that prison to change not just myself, but the world around me. Remember, the coffee bean changes the world around it. The power was inside the coffee bean to change the world, the atmosphere inside the pot. And that's what Muhammad was telling me. You have to be like that coffee bean and change the world around you. So one of the things I had to do was to teach these guys about the importance of developing a community. Communities are a place where everybody comes together, right? We all put our talents out on the table. We all want to be a part of something. We all take pride in the area we live in. That's what a community looks like. A lot of these guys had never come from an environment where community was important, right? But it was my job, I felt like, to be a coffee bean and change that pot of boiling water to coffee to teach these men about the importance of community. One of the ways I did this, if I'd see trash on the ground anywhere inside that prison, when I'm walking around, I'd pick up the trash. And man, these guys made fun of me at first. I mean, hey, white boy, that's not your trash. Yeah, it is. It's in front of my house. I live in a prison. This is my home. So I want this to be the nicest place possible. Another way of building a community, when I got to prison, y'all, I couldn't take any college classes. I had a bachelor's degree already. But what I did is I started a tutoring service. I would teach men how to read, how to write, get them ready for the GED test so that one day, if they ever got out, they could be a better husband, a better father to their families. I taught the guys the importance of that because when another guy would come around and need something, there'd be somebody else in that pod that could do something to help that person. But say it's a guy that's indigent, that has no money, but he wants to have a nice Christmas card or birthday card, drawn out and colored and painted for his family. This guy that has no money can't afford the artist that's the best artist in prison. But what if that artist said, hey, you know what? I'll do this for you for free, and you don't have to worry about ever paying me back. You go pay it forward. And that was the attitude that these guys started taking on. They're like, hey, if we can help each other out, servant leadership, right? Servant leadership is when we help other people reach their goals in life, help to raise everybody up to a different station in life. And once this attitude of servant leadership, this positivity started going, it caught on like wildfire. So much so that it got the attention of the parole board. Now, parole is a device they have in prison where they can let you out early. They can basically say, hey, we're going to let you get out of prison and you'll serve the rest of your sentence in the free world. You get out, you get a job, you have a home again. This is the dream of every man and woman in prison, right? To make parole. I come up for parole for the first time on that life sentence in 2015, 7 years into my life sentence. And the reason why I get to come up so early on a life sentence in Texas is because my crimes were considered non-aggravated, meaning that no one was ever home during these burglaries. I never physically hurt anybody, never saw my victims. They never saw me. These were property crimes, basically. So because they were property crimes, I was not held longer like a violent offender. In 2015, the parole board comes to see me for the first time. And y'all, I've got zero expectation of making parole that first time, right? That's 7 years on life. In fact, just to survive prison, I've programmed myself to believe I'll be there for at least 10 or 15 years. But the lady from parole comes to interview me.